welcome back to Unfinished Business. This is where I talk about crimes, killers and conspiracy theories. It's called Unfinished Business because the cases may be closed, however the curiosity and the questions definitely aren't. And today it is going to be an interesting one, so let's pour it and get into it. I just want to start off and say, so lucky to have an episode this week. The weather in the UK is absolutely crazy, and if my fan is on in the background you can hear it, and it's annoying, but I am absolutely sweating buckets right now, so please be appreciative that there's even an episode out this week. This episode is going to be on the Black Dahlia murder, a woman also known as Elizabeth Short. Not a lot of people noticed a dark-haired woman when she was dropped off at the swanky Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. However, when her torso was found a week later, Elizabeth Short became a household name. On the morning of the 15th of January 1947, Bertie Bertzinger was walking with her young daughter along a barely developed street in the planned neighbourhood of Letterman Park when she saw what she thought was two halves of a mannequin from a tailor. It wasn't. This mannequin which Betty thought she saw wasn't a mannequin, it was Elizabeth Short's body, which was just a few feet from the sidewalk. It had been cut in two, neatly at the waist and drained of blood. She had been mutilated, her intestines removed and her mouth slashed from ear to ear, a gruesome cut known as the Glasgow Smile. Her body had been washed clean before being dumped in an empty field. So this case is in fact unsolved. So there's not really much we know about Elizabeth Short or the Black Dahlia murder, but in this episode I will go into a few of the conspiracy theories and Elizabeth Short's life just to give a bit of context around the events that happened leading to her death. The ensuing investigation was carried out by the LA police. The FBI was asked to help, and it was quickly identified that it was her body in just 56 minutes. In fact, after getting blurred fingerprints via sound photo, a primitive fax machine used by news services. This was from Los Angeles. The young woman turns out to be the 22-year-old Hollywood hopeful named Elizabeth Short, later dubbed the Black Dahlia by the press for her rumored penchant for sheer black clothes and the Blue Dahlia movie out at that time. Short's prints actually appeared twice in FBI's massive collection. There were more than 100 million on file at that time. First, Short had applied for a job as a clerk at the commissary of the Army's Camp Cook in California, January 1943. Secondly, she had been arrested by the Santa Barbara police for underage drinking 7 months later. The Bureau also had her mugshot in its files and provided it to the press. In support of the LA police, the FBI ran record checks on potential suspects and conducted interviews across the nation. Based on early suspicions that the murderer may have been skilled in dissection because the body was so cleanly cut, agents were also asked to check out a group of students at the University of Southern California Medical School. A tantalising potential to break the case, the Bureau searched for a match on the fingerprints, found an anonymous letter that may have been sent to the authorities by the killer, but the prints weren't in the FBI files. Who killed the Black Dahlia and why? It's a mystery. The murderer for the Black Dahlia case has never been found, and given how much time has passed, it probably will never be. We're now going to go into Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia's background. She was born in 1924 in Boston, Massachusetts. She was one of 5 daughters. Her father disappeared from the family's life when she was young. He later reappeared years later, leading to the confusion about his status. She spent parts of her youth in Massachusetts and Florida, moving between relatives due to financial instability. She reportedly suffered from asthma and fainting spells, which sometimes interrupted schooling. There was a general pattern, somewhat disrupted but not unusual, depression era childhood with frequent relocation. In her teenage years, the late 30s to the early 40s, she attended high school, but she did not complete a stable, uninterrupted education. In her late teens, she moved to Florida, where she lived with her father for a time. Her relationship with her father was reportedly difficult, and she had to leave. Black Dahlia worked small jobs such as restaurant service type of work, typical of young women in that era. During this period, she became increasingly interested in glamour culture and fashion and Hollywood films. Her friends later described her as someone who wanted a more cinematic life than she had locally. Her early California exposure was 1942 to 1944. Like many young people at the time, she was drawn to Los Angeles because of the film industry. She had no documented major acting roles, but she did socialise in areas where aspiring actors and servicemen gathered. The World War II era of Los Angeles had a large population of transit workers, soldiers, and young migrants. These short-term relationships and temporary housing arrangements were common in this environment. She returned to the East Coast in the mid-1940s. She spent time back in Massachusetts and possibly Florida after her initial California period. She started moving between jobs and residences. Some accounts describe her as being social, well liked, and attractive, but also without a stable long term employment. Everything about Short was short term: her jobs, her friendships, and her living arrangements. This phrase is important because it shows that she wasn't permanently rooted anywhere. It also demonstrates repeated movement between social circles and cities. Returning to Southern California in 1946, again pursuing career opportunities, she stayed in Los Angeles and nearby areas, often without a fixed residence. She relied on friends and acquaintances, short-term stays, informal housing arrangements, social environment. She moved within the broader Los Angeles social scene. The bars and the cafes, the movie industry adjacent communities, the military connected social spaces. She was known to meet new people frequently and move between contacts. As again, Short was very here, there, everywhere. It was very short term everywhere. Her housing, everything, her career, everything. She was here, there, everywhere. She wasn't staying in one place. She was meeting new people every day. It wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm with Tracy. I'm with Tracy today, tomorrow, the next day. No. Short was here, there, everywhere. Now we're moving on to late 1946, early January 1947, which was Short's final months. This is the least fully documented, but still the most important period of Short's life. Short's living situation, once again, was not long term, it was short term. She did not have confirmed stable apartment or a long term residence. She stayed intermittently with acquaintances, not friends, acquaintances. Acquaintances is someone that you walk past every day and go, hi. Acquaintance is someone that you're like, oh, like you're not really my friend. Like, could she trust these people? Her financial situation was unstable. Within her social life, once again, Short continued to meet new people in Los Angeles. Multiple accounts suggest that she travelled between neighbourhoods, spent time with various male acquaintances, and sometimes disappeared from friends' contacts for days at a time. How Short has created a behaviour pattern. This is based on the witness's recollections. She was seen as polite, soft-spoken, and aspirational. She was interested in becoming an actress, but she didn't have a breakthrough. Her lifestyle was typical of many young transplants post-war in Los Angeles who were still trying to make it. Before her death, Elizabeth Short's life was characterised by repeated movement between the states, Massachusetts, Florida, and Canada, unstable housing and employment, strong aspiration towards Hollywood fame, a social lifestyle built on short-term connections, and limited documentation in her last final months. This combination of Short's life is one of the main reasons that her case became so difficult to reconstruct and is so heavily analysed. There are many theories of the murder, one of which is Short was born in Boston. She was a child of depression and she came to Southern California not to pursue film stardom but a paramour. When that affair ended, she drifted between neighbourhoods and temporary friendships. At one point, she had an aspiring actress for her housemate and appropriated that woman's anecdotes as her own. She invented endless stories to gain sympathy. Sometimes she was a war widow, sometimes she had lost a child. In this theory, Short was to have liked military men and dated officers, not enlisted men. Candle wax to fill her cavities, which people did when they couldn't afford a dentist. She caged meals and rides and slept in an all-night movie theatre. Short had no permanent address when a travelling salesman picked her up in San Diego in January 1947, drove her down to the bus station in downtown Los Angeles where she dropped off one of her suitcases. He then left her at the Biltmore Hotel. She had lied and said that she was meeting her sister there. Then again, the same thing happens in this theory. Her body was spotted a few days later by a woman. The mouth was sliced ear to ear, the body was naked, posed flat on her back, drained of blood in two parts, neatly severed between the second and third lumbar vertebrae. The lead detectives suspected a practiced surgical hand, which is another theory that we'll get on to later in this episode. That's another theory which people were talking about. However, at this time, 4 Los Angeles newspapers competed fiercely for scoops. The Examiner transmitted the victim's fingerprints to the FBI to determine her name. Short's prints were on file because she had been arrested earlier. To get the background information, an Examiner reporter then called Short's mother with the cruel ruse that her daughter had won a beauty contest. So her daughter's dead, but no, she won a beauty contest. What? Imagine your daughter's dead and someone just wants to get information out of you. So like, yeah, Elizabeth won the contest today. Yeah, she was part of a beauty contest. I don't know what you're talking about. Her daughter's dead. Number one, no consideration. Number two, just ask. This woman might want to know more too. This woman might want to... Obviously, this woman's going to want to know who killed her child. The police had learned that Shaw had brief encounters with many men, who almost unanimously maintained the encounters had been non-sexual. The lead detective would describe her as a tease, adding, she probably just went too far this time and some guy just went off into a blind berserk rage. I'm guessing at that time sexism was definitely still a very big thing. It was like, what was you wearing though? Like, it was definitely one of them. Yeah, 1947, 100%. Like, we're in 2026 now. Yeah. Commonly discussed non-confirmed theory in criminology style is that Elizabeth Short was likely harmed by someone she had a recent direct contact with in Los Angeles shortly before her death, and that killing escalated from an interaction that turned violent. She was last seen alive in the Los Angeles area, January 1947, and had periods of unstable housing and movement between acquaintances. And to make this theory even stronger, the identity of the last person she was with before her death is not definitively established. Obviously, so that she was with that man in the last theory, but that's just the last theory. Now we're on to this one. People are saying that it's definitely the last person that she was with. They had a violent encounter, but nobody knows for sure the last person that she was with. Obviously, I've got one more theory to go through, so maybe you guys will agree with that one more. Physical evidence standards in 1947 were limited. You can imagine fingerprints probably didn't have that much of. Physical evidence standards in 1947 were limited, and many investigative leads were never fully verifiable. That's true because they didn't have cameras, probably not. If they did have cameras, definitely not good cameras. Like, you know how now we have like CCTV, like if you walk past, they're gonna get you. They're gonna get you. But back then, I'm pretty sure that they would have like, you know, like fingerprints. Like, someone would draw the fingerprint. It wasn't very like established technology, because we went over this in the Richard Ramirez case, and like at the start of the case there was literally like no way that they could be like analysing these fingerprints. But it started to go on, and then obviously they was able to catch him from fingerprints, but that I'm not too sure how they used to do it. I'm gonna have to look that up and get back to you on my next episode. But now we're gonna go into the next. Suspects were investigated historically, but none reached a legal conclusion. So all these suspects were investigated, but none of them came to the same conclusion. So it was not being able to be admissible in court. It's like he said, she said. Now we're going to move on to the last theory of today, the medical mortuary theory. This theory shows that Elizabeth Short's killer was a doctor, surgeon, or mortician. This is based on her body. This is based on the precise bisection of her body at the lumbar spine, the complete blood drainage and internal organ washing and surgical hemicorporectomy style. I've tried to pronounce that word more times than you can imagine. I don't know. Cuts. This suggested that the person who did this had advanced anatomical knowledge. This is no random person walking down the street in 1947 is going to know how to cut someone's spine between their lumbar spine. No one's going to know how to do that. Didn't just do that, they drained all of her blood, like completely. Her blood's gone, there's no blood left in this body, and wash her organs from the inside. Number one, that is completely disgusting. The person who did this is sick and cruel. But number two, no one average is going to know that. This is a theory that I believe in the most, because no one average is going to know that. The surgical precision. The body was severed perfectly between the second and third lumbar vertebrae without cutting through bone, a feat requiring specific knowledge of human joints. Exsanguination. The body was completely drained of blood. Experts suggest requires the use of specialised medical equipment and anticoagulants. I'm not too sure what that is, but I'm guessing it's something that they use to drain the blood out of people. That's crazy that the body was completely drained of blood. How we have so much blood pumping through our bodies as well, and obviously like when you die it'll just starts like spilling out. Like it depends if you have like a cut or something, but that's actually crazy. Her post-mortem care, her organs were removed, Short's organs were removed, washed and placed back into her body. This is a practice highly indicative of mortuary or embalming training, yeah, because when you die obviously you get cleaned properly and all that kind of stuff, so that would make sense if it was a mortuary person. But even still, how was this person not caught? I understand that the technology wasn't there, but it's just so like interesting. There's so many different theories on this. If you want to look into it, definitely look into it. There's so many theories on how this poor girl's life was tragically ended, but if you have a look, there's so many different theories and very interesting to look through them all. I just picked these three because, you know. But there were some main suspects. There was Dr. George Hodel. This was promoted heavily by his son, but there were suspects. Dr. George Hodel, promoted heavily by his son, former LAPD detective Steve Hodel. Dr. Hodel was a physician and surgeon. He had advanced medical training and he lived in downtown Los Angeles residence. This was near the crime scene. He was reportedly obsessed with surrealist art and sadomasochistic practices. However, there is no unambiguous evidence he ever met Short. So he's a suspect in this theory, but he never met Short. Not that can be proved, at least. So there's so much evidence against this man, except he never met Short. In this theory, he'd be a good suspect, but there's no confirmed evidence that he ever met Short. Then there was Dr. Walter Bailey, a Los Angeles physician who lived a 30-second walk from the Norton Avenue lot where Short's body was dumped. The Bailey family also had social ties to Short's sister. So this one's kind of related to Short. Can he really been put up as a suspect though? And then there's the Cleveland torso killer. This is another killer, and many medical theorists believe that the Dahlia murder was connected to the unsolved Cleveland torso murders. These were in the 1930s to 1940s. Killings also had featured surgical dismemberment, which suggests the work of a rogue medical professional or a butcher. Do you know what, now that I think about this could have been done by a butcher. Like, butchers clean pigs like intestines and stuff. You eat that. People eat liver, people eat all that kind of stuff. That gets cleaned, that gets drained. Now that's interesting. No hemicorectomy. The specific bisection technique used on Short was not officially recognised or performed in medical practice until years after her death in 1947. So like this was not like, this theory's been like debunked. Not like officially debunked, but like debunked, because this wasn't a specific technique used by surgeons, morticians. It wasn't recognised until years after. So Bambi's person is the one that started it, but it wasn't recognised until years after. And it was known as a sloppy execution. Despite the clean bisection, forensic analysts note that other parts of the mutilation, such as the facial slashes, were chaotic and erratic. This contradicts the idea of purely clinical, dispassionate medical procedure. That is a theory that I believe in the most. I think it's just there. Like, it's all there. Like, it's just all there. Theory that I think is the most logical. Like, a medical professional, that makes so much sense, because the way that she was killed, all that kind of stuff. And then obviously, like, if they wanted to throw them off the case a bit, but to be a bit sloppy and like, you know. But I'm not too sure, because I'm not too sure. Obviously, I can't be 100% sure because the evidence points either which way. Let me know which theory you believed in most, and I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. I will see you next week with another episode on Unfinished Business.